And anything that you want to ask, I have no problem answering it.
At this point, all I want are real answers about Brit's past. That's it. Did you ever sell it?
Did I ever?
The cat.
No, I did not. I didn't.
Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, Episode 7. And before we get into it, let me start off by saying that I am so tired of hearing about Porsha having this issue with Drew. It's not that deep. Let's move on. It's just not that interesting. And Porsha, it feels like we're grasping at straws here because you can't talk about your divorce and you can't film in the house. And shout out to the good folks on Twitter because y'all took the words out of my mouth. Because a few of y'all said, low key, Porsha is giving friend of vibes. And she is. We don't really have a strong concrete storyline from her. And Miss Brit, you already know that I'm going to be whacking you as well.
I'm gonna just scoot on over and let you whack him. Get him again. Get him for me.
Because Miss Mamas, with each passing episode, it's clear that you want to have an issue with anybody. You are another one who's trying to force some beef between you and Angela. Angela did nothing to you. So for you to say, well, you know, I thought she was a girl's girl and all this stuff, I'm like, are you okay? Once again, you're sitting up here conjuring up beefs that don't exist. Somebody questioning you about your insurance license is not them attacking you. It's a simple question because your story made no sense. Let this be Brit Edie's first and last season as a Real Housewife. Do not bring her back for season 17. But without further ado, let's get right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. Now, I don't understand why Bravo keeps insisting that we start off the episodes with Brit. She's not interesting, and her husband has no personality. I'm like, oh my gosh. Girl, could you pick a duller man? I'm not saying that he has to be the life of the party, but can you give us something? But girl, that's her husband, so whatever. But we see Brit and her husband at the dealership, and they're looking at luxury cars. We see Brit in a Ferrari, and Brit says that it's been a rough few weeks for her, but you can't keep a bad bitch down. So we see her lift her leg up in the Ferrari. She says that the car or the engine sounds like sex. And we see her husband tell her to put her leg down like you're doing too much. Now, it's no shade, right? But what does Brit's husband do? I remember Brit saying that she was his insurance agent and that's how they met, but I don't remember if she told us what he did for a living. Everything with Brit seems so phony and contrived. I just don't believe anything that she tells us or anything that she shows us. It just feels so staged. It feels like, let me put on a show because I'm on TV. I want the viewers to think of me as this rich woman, but I'm just not buying what she's trying to sell. There's just something about her that's not reading as authentic. And this car dealership scene gave very much a stunt and a show. So now we cut to a parallel scene with Angela, and Angela's at home. And Angela, your home is stunning, but your backyard, chef's kiss. I mean, gorgeous. That cabana, the pool, the basketball court, y'all did that. But anyhow, we see her setting up some charcuterie and champagne, and she has Drew over. So when I tell you, Drew looks so cute in this scene. I love that Judith Lieber martini glass purse. I said, oh girl, Judith Lieber is that girl, okay?
Bling, bling, bling. Bitches is mad.
But anyhow, they're enjoying themselves in Angela's cabana, and Drew makes a joke saying, oh, I see you have my cousin's tequila, and she's referencing Michael Jordan's tequila, because remember how in the last episode, Drew said that Michael Jordan is her cousin because her maiden name is Jordan, she's from Chicago, and yeah, that's her cousin, all right? But we know how black folks do. We'll claim anybody as our cousin, especially if they have a coin. Now, Angela definitely gives you Sheree Whitfield Jr. vibes, very much the bone collector, trying to move the storylines along. but she's also very nosy. And when she said, Drew, I have to call you out about that because I spoke to Michael Jordan's son, Marcus, and he said that you guys are not cousins. And now we cut to Angela's confessional and she says, who the hell is still lying about being somebody's cousin? We did that in grade school.
Who the hell still lying about being somebody's cousins? Like, we did that in grade school. I really wanted Drew to be joking.
Maybe I'm manifesting it.
Girl, bye. You're not Michael Jordan's cousin.
And I was like, note to self, never joke about being cousins with anybody famous in front of Angela Oakley because she will investigate and she will be upset about it. And also, Angela, not too much on Drew when you're over here telling us half-truths and lies about what's really going on between you and Charles and you and your mom and your daughter and your sister, because I'm still confused as to why your daughter is living with your mother and your sister when she's married, and why does your daughter need to borrow her grandma's car when her mother and her stepfather are both millionaires. So until we get the full truth about those stories, not too much on Miss Drew Sidora, just in my humble opinion. So now Drew's asking Angela how she's doing, and Angela says, oh girl, I'm exhausted. Then she brings up Kelly's peace brunch from last week, and she says, in that peace brunch, that was more like sour lemonade with that halfway decent food. So then she makes a joke saying that those grits were barely cooked. I said, oh my gosh. Now, Kelly, considering that you are the chicken and waffles queen and you pride yourself on delicious food, I'm going to need you to host brunches where the food is good. Because the fact that Angela's saying that your food was subpar, that's not a good look. And you know that I don't play about the spreads on these shows. So, Kelly, if it's true that the grits were halfway cooked at your brunch, do better. So now we jump on over to Kelly. She's at home. And she has her sister over, there's food, and she's having some of the women over. So we see Cynthia arrive first. And I have to say, when it comes to Cynthia being a friend of, I think that that's the perfect role for her. Because if she were full-time, I just don't know if she would have enough to give us. But I like the fact that we have a familiar face back on, and it's just enough. I think a lot of these women would do a lot better as a friend of versus being full-time. And it's no shade. It's still a nice check. You get confessionals, you get the press and promotion. So it's nothing to sneeze at, but I feel like a lot of these women could take a page out of Cynthia's book and look into being a friend of, instead of wearing out their welcomes as a full-time cast member. Just in my humble opinion. But Cynthia's telling Kelly all about her dating life. She says that all the guys her age want younger women, and the younger men want women her age. So then she goes on to give a checklist of her perfect man. She says she wants somebody who's financially stable. And I said, of course, because after marrying Peter Thomas, that should be number one on your list. And what's the deal with Peter anyway? Is he in jail? Wasn't he arrested for something? Writing bad checks or whatever? Let me know down below. But yeah, I feel like his name is always in the news about something of the sort. Something in terms of money. And not getting checks, but bouncing checks. But it seems like Cynthia found her guy because she is dating somebody. I think they've been dating for a year now. If you listen to her podcast with Crystal from Beverly Hills, she talks about him a lot. I think he's a musician. He's Dutch, I believe. And she seems really happy, so good for her. So now we see Porsha arrive, and then we see Shamia. Now, one thing about Shamia loves her a pair of shorts. I think that in every scene, Shamia is wearing shorts. A quick side note. I've said this before. I think that Shamia is a beautiful woman. But I want her to elevate her style. I want the fashions to reflect now. I feel like Shamia is low-key stuck in the 2010s fashion-wise. And I just need her to come up to now. Come up to 2025. But Shamia loves her a good pair of shorts. But Shamia, shout out to you for coming to Kelly's house with a bottle of Ace of Spades. I said, oh yes, the wealth continues to jump out.
We drinking strawberry and champagne. Hold on, let me get
strawberry. Let me strawberry.
So we see Shamia open up a bottle of champagne, and Porsha's like, oh, by the way, what happened at your peace brunch the other day? And we all know that Porsha wasn't there because she was sick. So Kelly says it was a mess because Drew and Angela walked in already Team Kenya, and Brit was in defense mode. And now we jump right back to Brit and her husband Mike at the dealership. And when I tell you, Brit worked every last nerve. When Brit said, oh yeah, honey, to have this woman come for my career. And I said, Brit, are you aware that you might need to get some help? Because nobody came for your career. Angela asked you a simple question. How did you lose your license? Because I'm also an insurance agent myself. That's not coming for your career. And it's quite alarming at how you were able to twist a story and make it seem like you're the victim. You really believe in your pea brain that Angela was coming for you. The real reason why you have all this smoke and anger for Angela is because you're embarrassed that you were caught in a lie. Being investigated and having your license taken away, those are two different things. You lied. But for you to spin this around and act like Angela is the villain here, no ma'am. You need to go see the lady because something's not right. Everybody's not your enemy. Everybody's not against you, especially when you're the one at fault. So now we jump to Brit's confessional, and Brit is still going on and on about Angela. She says that Angela lacks empathy, and then she goes on to say, I thought that she was a girl's girl. I said, wait, what? You're talking about somebody being a girl's girl?
You know what? This is too much.
You're not a girl's girl, and I want that phrase to die because being a girl's girl is only real on the internet. In real life, it's not true. But I find it hilarious that the same woman who can't get along with other women, not even her sisters, is mad at somebody else not being a girl's girl. And in this case, Angela didn't even do anything to you. But Brit goes on to say that she can't trust Angela. And now Brit says, and what if I talked about what the press has been saying about you? Because I heard that your husband had a baby on you. And now the producer's asking Brit, where did she hear that tea from? And Brit's like, well, you know, there have been whispers about it. And I said, girl, that's stale tea. Wendy Williams already broke that story in 2019. And Brit, not too much because there's a lot being said about you and your husband. So now we jump right back to Angela and Drew. And Angela brings up Ralph and Drew's arrangement with her having to leave on certain weekends. And Drew confirms that this weekend is Ralph's weekend with the kids in the house and she has to leave. And then she goes on to say that they have their second court hearing on Friday. And she goes on to say that she's hoping that they're able to keep their divorce sealed because she's not trying to have their kids read all about mommy and daddy fighting. So now Angela brings up Drew and Dennis's working relationship. And she's like, was Ralph jealous? So Drew says that in the beginning, Dennis did talk to Ralph and she talked to Porsha and they both seemed fine until now. And I'm not surprised by their antics. Porsha needs a storyline. She needs some sort of beef to drag out. And Ralph is so fame hungry that he's doing whatever it takes to get a confessional and the day rate in craft services and a free gas card, okay? So now we're back at Kelly's and Cynthia brings up Drew and Porsha's relationship. And she's like, have you guys made up? So Porsha says, well, I've moved on in a very mature manner. And I said, really, Porsha? I wouldn't call it mature. Because I'm sorry, Porsha, it's ridiculous that you cannot have a one-on-one conversation with Drew about them working together. It's just dumb. You are dragging this out for no reason. And considering how you got Simon, for you to have any animosity towards another woman working with your baby's father and nothing's going on, you of all people should be extending grace to Drew. And Porsha, it's been said a million times, if you and Simon were still married, you would not care about Drew and Dennis working together. But because you guys are going through this divorce and he's making your life a living hell, you can't film in your home, you can't talk about the divorce, you want to take your anger out on somebody. But this anger is misdirected. So Cynthia's like, oh, so you guys are good? And Porsha says, no, we're not good. I wouldn't use that word. And then she goes on to add that when it comes to some people, you see who they are and you can't let them get too close. And I said, really? Drew doesn't have beef with you. She wants to make up with you and just move on. A beef only works when two people actively hate each other, and a one-sided beef just isn't fun to watch. But Porsha says that she's done with it, and then she says that she wants to have some fun. So in honor of her birthday, she wants to spend it in Nashville with the girls, and she's inviting all of them. So we find out that she's also invited some other friends, Monietta, her sister Lauren, and 2 other women. And now you have Cynthia asking if Drew's invited. And I said, now Cynthia, this is obviously to be messy, because you know how petty Porsha is. So let's use our brains for like 5 seconds. You know that she's not. So Porsha says, no, I did not invite her, did not extend the invite, so no. When it comes to these trips on these shows, we all know the deal. Y'all are on a show. Y'all are contractually obligated to be on these cast trips, right? So trying to exclude somebody, unless that person assaulted you, there's really no excuse for leaving them out of the cast trip, in my opinion. Also, Porsha, this just isn't that deep for you to harbor such ill feelings towards Drew. And now we jump right back over to Angela and Drew, and Angela brings up Porsha's birthday trip to Nashville. So she tells Drew that she wants Drew to come on behalf of her, and she says, look, if I can be in the same room as Brit, then you can be in the same room as Porsha. So Drew is skeptical, and she says, look, with the energy that I'm getting from Porsha, I would need to hear it from her that she wants me to come. And I'm the same way because I don't do secondhand invitations. If I don't hear it from the host or the hostess, count me out. I'll find some other plans. I'm good. But in this situation, I guess you have to remember that you're on a show and you are contractually obligated to attend these trips, even if the hostess doesn't want you on the trip, because you skip that trip, you won't be getting paid for those episodes. So I get it. Now, the way I laughed when they cut right back to Porsha saying that Drew is a pathological liar, and I said, well, what are you, Porsha? And let's not act like your good friend who's coming back to the show in the second half of this season, Phaedra Parks. You want to talk about liars?
I don't know what I do. 6 months? I know they're going to do it at 34 weeks. So 34 weeks is when he's going to come.
Oh, okay. Shut up! That is so stupid.
Girl, I wouldn't talk too much about Drew is such a liar, because we have watched quite a few liars for years. So this scene with Drew and Brit meeting up for drinks had me screaming, because Drew had her questions ready and she asked what we wanted to know. I said, say what you want about Miss Drew, but Miss Drew is really doing a great job for me this season. I think that she has one of the stronger storylines out of a lot of the girls so far. Shamia, Drew, Kelly, and Angela are all giving what the other girls were supposed to have gave. Because I don't know what Porsha and Brit are doing, but the 4 of them are doing their jobs, and I salute them. But I'm here for Miss Drew Sidora this season, okay? And can we talk about that hair color? That gingery red is perfection on her. Drew has really elevated her look this season, and she's killing it. Whoever her stylist is, whoever her glam squad is, they're doing a great job. But anyhow, Drew says that she was so happy that Brit reached out to her, and Brit says, yeah, I know, because the brunch last week was a mess. And I said, it was a mess because you started the whole entire thing. You're the one who copped the attitude first. What aren't you getting? So Drew's like, well, Brit, you did come in a bit hot. And we have Brit in her confessional whining about how Drew was supporting Kenya and she was the one who was humiliated. So where's her support? And I said, Brit, in all seriousness, shut up. What Kenya did was wrong. We've all acknowledged that. But you have to remember that Drew and Kenya were actually friends way before you joined this show. So to think that Drew wouldn't support Kenya or be by her side during this trying time, it's a bit delusional. So Drew says, look, I can understand where you're coming from, but the fact that you kept repeating how Kenya's no longer here, it felt like you were celebrating it. And she definitely was. She was damn near gloating about getting Kenya off the show. It wasn't lost on me in the last episode when she kept saying, well, Kenya's not here. Kenya's no longer here. I said, okay, girl, we get it. You are thrilled that she is fired. And Kenya, let me whack you for the last time. I am so pissed that you allowed Brit Edie to trick you out of your spot. You should have never allowed her to get the best of you like this, and to do it on your special day at that. Just an overall embarrassment. But Brit, I wouldn't celebrate too hard because you're gonna be off this show too. I don't think that anybody sees you coming back for season 17. I just don't. So Drew says that she's open to getting to know Brit, and she says, I really want to understand you. So Brit says, well, that's good because I'm an open book and you can ask me anything. I said, oh, really, girl? I said, okay. So Drew goes right for it. She says, so were you selling it? So Brit's like, selling what? And Drew says, selling cat. If y'all could have heard how loud I screamed. So Brit says, no, I haven't. And now Drew's like, okay, but have you ever done porn? Have you ever given us a little Brazzers tea? You know what's funny? I was actually going to go live for this recap, but I said, let me not, because I know when I get to this part, you guys are going to clown in that chat. Baby, the way you have my chat so freaked out, I'm just like, my God. So Brit's stuttering like Sheree. She's like, yeah, no, and I was just like, girl, it's a yes or no question.
Tell her, boo-boo kitty. I'm she. Oh, now you can't speak English.
So Brit says that she did webcamming with a friend. They were both naked and having conversation. She did it for 1 week, made some good money, and that's it. And she's not ashamed of it. And I said, okay. I said, webcamming, OnlyFans, Brazzers, whatever you want to do, honey, be free. Now, I meant to say this earlier, but shout out to the insurance agents who watch me, because y'all let me know that you can be an insurance agent and still do a little, extra stuff on the side and nobody cares. Selling some insurance by day and showing cat at night, okay? I'm in an extra silly mood today. Don't mind me. But shout out to the insurance agents, okay? Shout out to all the girls. So now Brit questions Drew, and she's like, Drew, I have to ask you, did you say at Shamia's house the other day that you knew who the recipient of the sucking was? So Drew says, I might have, because on the poster boards, there were other people, and I thought I did recognize one of them. So Brit's like, oh, really? So if you recognize the dick, does that mean that you're the one who sucked it? So Drew said no real fast. She was like, look, girl, this is not about me. It's about you. I'm not involved in this whole incident, okay? That's all on you. So now Brit's like, why would you say that to the group? And Drew says, look, sometimes I like to joke around. That's it and that's all. So now Brit goes for the sympathy card, and she's like, but Drew, put yourself in my shoes for 2 seconds. This woman called me a whore and a fraud. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. And I said, Brit, I'm sorry to hear that. I truly am. But let's not forget that you were over there looking like a fool in that parking lot. Talk about, I got whips, I got pistols, I'm not on that Hollywood. Like, stop, okay? Drew was not here for the pity party. She says, girl, I know what that's like. I'm dealing with it now. I've been in the blogs before. My character has been compromised. So yeah, I get it. Drew low-key said, baby, you're not getting any sympathy from me because I have my own stuff going on. But we do see Drew and Brit come to an understanding and they're cool. So we're going to see where Brit and Drew go from here. But this was a cute scene because I was here for Drew asking all those questions. So now we jump on over to the day of Drew and Ralph's second court hearing. When I tell y'all, this scene had me livid. Ralph should feel ashamed of himself as a grown-ass man fighting to stay in the basement. And that scene with him and his lawyer, I just said, how is he paying for his lawyer? Is he digging into Drew's account? Because what job does he have? What money is he making? And one of y'all had me screaming on Twitter. You said that Ralph's lawyer was giving you Tubi acting. I said, not Tubi. And she was very animated, but Miss Mamas is obviously making some coin. We saw that red Birkin, she has some Louis Vuitton. Then we saw all that Van Cleef on her wrist. I said, okay, she might be giving you Tubi acting, but she is getting a real coin. But we see Drew talking to her lawyer, and now in Drew's confessionals, she says that the goal for today is to get Ralph to move out of the basement and to pay child support. Drew is another cautionary tale of why women, especially in the entertainment business, why you cannot marry down. Stop doing it. But Drew goes on to say that she's hoping that the divorce documents can remain sealed. And then she says that there's more damaging information about Ralph than there is about her. And nobody's surprised about that. You could tell that Drew was miserable in that marriage and that Ralph was cheating and doing whatever he wanted while they were married. That was obvious. So we see them come out of the court hearing, and it's obvious that things went in Ralph's favor and not in Drew's favor. And I just felt so bad because Drew looked so defeated. And when she was like, Ralph can still stay in the basement and he did not even turn over his financials, like, what the hell is the judge thinking? And I'm just so confused as to how Ralph is allowed to keep getting away with this, because aren't you legally obligated to turn over your financials in a divorce? For all my divorce subscribers, let me know down below. But I'm just like, how is Ralph getting away with this? And I also felt bad because the judge also ruled for them to unseal the case. So Drew is really upset and she says, this whole thing is a nightmare. So now we see Ralph outside with his team and he is cheering about how he can still stay in the basement. And I said, sir, you are a sorry individual, because I just don't believe that any man with any pride would be gloating about still getting to stay in the basement of the house of his ex-wife that you know that his ex-wife bought. Where is the pride? And if you claim to have all this money, sir, why won't you get your own place? I'm just not understanding this. It's so sick to me. And to see him gloating about it, I was sick to my stomach. I was just like, oh my gosh. Drew, you really married a bum, like you did. So now we cut to Drew's confessional and she's like, I have to wonder, was there ever love? Was there ever a friendship? And I just said, Drew, respectfully, I think that Ralph was using you the entire time. And I don't think that narcissists are able to receive or give love. So there's also that. And when Drew rolled that window down and said, you know what, you're such an idiot, you're a dumbass, you know that? And he was standing there like, oh, me? Like, really? Me? And I just said, Drew, pay that man dust. He wants you to be upset. The fact that Bravo continues to give Ralph these solo confessionals is troubling. So him going on about how there have been so many misconceptions about him, and the biggest one being that we all think that he never cared for Drew. He says that that's not true, and although he made his mistakes throughout the marriage, so did Drew. So unsealing the documents gives them an equal playing field, so that way the public knows that it wasn't all him, it was both of them. Now, if Ralph is trying to allude to Drew cheating, sir, we don't care if that is the truth, because you treated her so poorly. Who could blame her? I just think that Ralph is a sick man, and I feel sorry that Drew is going to always be tied to this man because they have kids. Ralph seems like a walking nightmare. So now it's the day of Porsha's Nashville birthday trip, and when I tell you, Porsha's outfit was everything, very sexy, and I love a good airport outfit anyway, so I say yes, girl, like, did that, okay? Now we see everybody on the plane, they're all in first class, and mind you, Angela missed her flight. I said, Angela, girl, I'm gonna need you to get it together. So Angela says that she left her house a bit late, and then on top of that, the traffic wasn't accommodating. So that's why she missed her flight. May I just say, I don't know how people miss flights. Maybe it's the West Indian in me, but I'm at that airport 2 to 3 hours in advance. And don't let it be an international flight. I'm there 6 hours in advance. All right, I'm not missing anything. And don't get smart, because yes, I do have pre-check and I do have clear, all right? However, I'm still at that airport well in advance. I like to be in the lounges, the Centurion Lounge or the Delta Sky Lounge. I like to eat, have my drinks, get my magazines at Hudson News. Like, it's a whole experience, all right? And sometimes I don't love the food in the lounge, so I'll go to one of the restaurants and I'll eat there, but I like to take my time. I don't like being rushed. I will never understand how folks will rush or get to the airport with 30 minutes to go. No. But Angela, girl, you need to leave your house earlier. Kelly gives some really fun shade, because when she said, oh, she probably missed that flight because she had to go back home and get her fan when she saw that heat wave in Nashville. And then when they cut to Angela at the gate and she has her fan with her and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm sweating. I'm like, it's so hot. I said, oh my gosh. Angela, you need to come out with a line of fans. Do it now. So they land in Nashville, and now we see them in the Sprinter van on their way to the house. So it was funny because Brit mentioned that she has bad allergies and her nose is stuffed up. And now you have Porsha questioning if Brit still has her adenoids in. And Brit's like, oh, I don't know about that. I got a nose job. And I said, so clearly it's the nose job that's affected your voice, and why you always sound like this. My name is Brit Edie, and I can't stand Kenya. But Shamia says that she wants to get some surgery done this summer. She wants to get her back rolls removed. And now Porsha's like, yeah, I was thinking about getting my boobs redone, but you know what? These men don't deserve these new titties. They were once Coco and Chanel, and now they're Bob and Ben. One thing about it, Porsha has always been funny, and when she's in her bag, she's hilarious, because the way I screamed at that, I said, not Bob and Ben. Now, the house that Porsha picked for them was gorgeous. I said, Porsha, you did that. They're greeted by the bartender, Abel. He has some drinks ready for them. It was called the Howdy Henny, and I was like, oh, I need parts, because that drink sounds lit. So their chef comes out to greet them. And when I tell you, Chef Dev, that spread, 10 out of 10. I said, oh, you ate that. And it's barbecue too. Mouth just watering. Side note, when I tell y'all, Easter dinner was so good. Jerk chicken, sweet potatoes. You had the mac, cabbage. I mean, fresh cornbread, like a feast, okay? Let me stop it. Let me just stop. Let me focus. But the girls in Atlanta will always give you some good food. Potomac for season 10, please take notes. Porsha gives them a tour of the house. They look at the rooms. We all know how it goes on these shows. Somebody always gets the worst room. And this is why I'm going to always be a hotel girl, because I don't want to be in a room with bunk beds or some twin bed by the wall. Like, no, thank you. I'll be at the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, and I'll meet you guys for lunch and dinner and the club, you know? Because don't put me in some stupid room. So now they sit down for lunch, and Kelly's asking Porsha, how does she feel about celebrating her birthday this year while going through a divorce? So Porsha says it definitely feels different because we would always celebrate together. Simon's birthday is June 2nd and mine is June 22nd. And now Porsha says that she just knew that she wanted to be with her girlfriends this year and wanted to catch a vibe. So now Cynthia jumps in and says, yeah, but girls' trips can be tricky. And I said, girl, can we talk about that for like a minute? I already know that I owe you guys like several story times, but I do want to do a video one day about girls trips because I have gone on so many and 95% of the girls trips were horrible. We'll do a whole story time series on that. But I said, Cynthia, you ain't lying. So now Porsha says, it's like some girls are totally different when they get out of town. And now Brit jumps in and says, yeah, and some women are different in front of a group. So now Brit says that Angela texted her the other day and said, I hope that you're doing well, and then changed her tune. So Shamia's like, oh yeah, I don't like that either. And while Brit's talking about Angela, Angela walks in. And Angela was like, yeah, you know how you could feel that you're being talked about? They were talking about me. And I said, well, it was obvious because when you walked in the room, Brit's face was like, oh, damn, like, I hope she didn't hear me. It was real obvious. So Angela says that her luggage burst and it's been a long morning, but she's happy that she's here. So Porsha says, well, I'm happy that you were able to make it, Angela. And now Angela brings up Drew, and Porsha is instantly annoyed. She can't even hide her irritation. So Porsha's like, how do you want Drew to come on my trip? And Angela's not even paying Porsha any mind. She says, well, I anticipate seeing Drew on this trip. And Porsha's like, well, thanks, but no thanks. So now Angela brings up how at Shamia's house, Porsha said that they could coexist together. So she wants to facilitate them getting along. So Shamia's like, Angela's crazy. Cynthia says, Angela, it's the wrong road. You don't want to mess with petty Porsha. And Porsha's like, Angela has lost her damn mind. Like, who does that? So now she's like, you know what, Angela, it's fine. Whatever. I don't care. So mind you, as they're all talking about Drew, Shamia calls out Kelly for being so quiet. So she's like, girl, what's going on? Are you okay? So Kelly says, oh yeah, I'm just on the phone with my stylist because he's on the way with all the pieces that I bought because we've curated all these looks for the trip. So now Angela turns to Kelly and she's like, oh, so you were shopping for the trip when I saw you at the mall the other day? And Kelly confirms that yes, they were doing some shopping. So now we find out from Brit that the other day her and Kelly ran into Angela at Neiman's, and she says that Angela was ducking and dodging them. She had her granny glasses on, her hair was a mess, and she hid in the clothes. So Brit's alluding to maybe Angela got some more work done on her face and that's why she wasn't trying to be seen. And now we hear from Angela that that's not true. Angela says that she went up to Kelly and Brit first and gave them hugs. Now Brit's delusional and she lies. So I'm not believing this story. I believe that Angela did speak to them first at Neiman's and she was pleasant. And Brit has concocted this whole story in her head to make Angela look bad. But I'm not believing a word of it. Why would anybody hide from Brit and Kelly? So Brit says to Angela that that was the first time seeing her since the peace brunch. And she says, I walked up to you and gave you a hug. So Angela says, yeah, I received your hug. It was good vibes. It was fine. So now Brit says, so was that real or was that fake? And I just said, Brit, are you all right? Like, what is going on? And why are you forgetting that you're the one who owes Angela an apology? You snapped at her for no reason. But Angela says, no, it was real. I'm not fake. When I show you love, I mean it. But they toast to Porsha's birthday, and now it's time for them to break off to get their glam and get ready for the night. Now, when I tell you that Kelly brought her entire glam squad because she has her assistant there, her hairstylist, her makeup artist. I mean, baby, it was like a team of at least 3 or 4 people. So we find out that she's letting Brit also use her glam squad as well. And one of y'all threw out a theory about you believe the reason for Brit and Kelly's fallout has to do with Brit sharing Kelly's glam squad. And I wouldn't be surprised. So we see them all ready to go for the night. And when I tell you my favorite looks, Porsha looked really good. I like Brit and Kelly's looks. They look good. I liked Angela's a lot. Those are my favorites. But we see Porsha's sister and her other friends arrive to join them. They're going to be staying for the night. And Porsha's excited. So now they go ride the mechanical bull. And when I tell y'all, nobody lasted that long on that bull. But overall, they were having a good time. So now they sit down to eat, and Porsha says that it's been her best birthday ever. And now the question of where's Drew comes up. So we now cut to a parallel scene of Drew out with her sister Allison at Dennis's club called Crew. And I said, Drew, I'm not even mad at it because Porsha wants to sit up there and not invite you to her birthday trip. So go on ahead and get you some free bottles at her baby daddy's club. But Drew says that she's celebrating the fact that they got offered a record deal, and then we see her FaceTime Dennis. So she's like, thanks so much for the bottles, bro. And Dennis is like, oh yeah, of course. Now, a quick side note. Has anybody noticed that in pretty much every scene with Drew, we always see her sister Allison? You might as well give Allison a peach and a tagline too. So we jump right back to everybody else in Nashville, and Porsha says, well, she wasn't invited. So now Porsha calls out Angela for inviting Drew on her trip, and she goes on to say that Angela pretty much bullied her into inviting Drew. And I just said, Porsha, you're a grown woman. Nobody bullied you to do anything. And we've seen you throw hands, so you're not scared of anybody. So Angela says, I thought this trip was all about putting our differences aside. And Porsha says, no, this trip is about me. So now Porsha starts going off on Angela, and she's like, what kind of mother effing glue is on your wig, girl? What are you not understanding? And Angela says, well, break it down to me like I'm 5 years old. And Porsha says, no, I'm going to talk to you like however old you are, 65. So pretty much nobody believes that Angela is 43. So Porsha says that Angela brought this whole vibe and everybody's forgotten that it's her birthday. And I said, oh my gosh, Porsha, are you really doing this? Nobody's forgotten that it's your birthday. Like, all these dramatics for what? We get it, you don't like Drew, but let's not go overboard. So Porsha says, you know what, Angela? You should have kept your effing mouth shut. Now, I have to say, I was a bit surprised that Angela took Porsha cursing at her, because her vibe when Brit cursed at her was different. So one of Porsha's friends, I think her name was Pravi, she's asking what happened. She's confused about what's going on between Porsha and Drew in the first place. So Porsha's saying a whole bunch of nothing, and now Porsha's sister Lauren jumps in. Drew's talking to Dennis, and they're making more than just music. And now someone else blurts out that Drew gave Dennis head. So they're all like, wait, what? Like, excuse me? And now we cut to Porsha in her confessional saying that she has no idea what they've done, but fellatio is Dennis's thing, and that's how he keeps his body count balanced. So we end the episode there, but let me just say, do I believe that Drew gave Dennis head? I just don't. I really don't think that anything romantic has happened between them. You know how you can feel a spark, you can feel that chemistry and tension between two people? I don't feel that from Drew and Dennis. It's definitely giving brother-sister vibe. Like, I just don't think that they're secret lovers on the low. If anything, I believe that they're both being petty to piss Porsha off, but I honestly do not think that there was any fellatio involved. I just don't. But all this anger towards Drew is not giving. In all seriousness, your storyline is low-key flatlining because you came back and you haven't given us much. I guess we'll have to wait and see what you bring us when your best friend comes back in the fold, Phaedra Parks. Maybe we'll get something from you, who knows? But either way, I'm going to need you to retire this one-sided beef with Drew because I'm over it. And the majority of the viewers feel the same way. But guys, that was my recap. Thank you so much for watching. To all my listeners on the podcast, thank you for listening. And you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all later. Bye.